jacayl saqiiriyo sibnima ku helayo suntiyu ku durayo sikaraadabaani nafjacayl saqiiriyo sibnima ku helayo suntiyu ku durayo sikaraadabaani mahungoobo samiiro sadaaqa reer ma marisay allafiya sadkiisana naseegi maaye mahungoobo samiiro sadaaqa reer ma marisay allafiya sadkiisana naseegi maaye saradan jalana saaxi badar bay sidiho obaley sidirgam sabakula cayaartu siyar waxaad ku dhaaftay siday noqon allaa oge isaas eegnay gabadha soomaalida ka doortay siday noqon allaa oge isaas eegnay gabadha soomaalida ka doortay
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, everybody. Today, the space is going to be recorded, and inshallah, we will be speaking in English. It won't be longer than 1 hour to 1 hour and 30 minutes. Mr. Burdab, thanks for co hosting. Today's topic will be the destabilization mission of the Horn of Africa is underway. Actually, there are two missions in the title. If you can delete one, Mr. Burdab. So I'll be inviting few speakers of ours, and I don't know if we will be able to take some questions. Let's see what happens. Since people can listen the recorded space later after our speakers, we will be right away getting into the discussion, inshallah. And thank you for coming. Let me invite our speakers. Mr. Budab, let me know if you can hear me and if you're there.
Assalamu alaikum, Saeed. One of Osama Damantin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I could hear you. Everything is good. Kuso Dawada. Welcome, everybody. One of Osama Damantin.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dhammaantiin waa idin salaamay. Isku soo noqod dambe adeersadina way noo soo laabtay. Lagu soo dhawaado. Welcome back.
Welcome. Maanta waxay u eg tahay waxaa laga hadli doonaa expansionism, extremism. Waa la arkaa titleka The Destabilization Mission. Marka Saeed wax kale miyaa rabta inaan ku daro? Saeed, are you still there?
Okay, welcome everybody. The Horn of Africa region is facing two main ideological threats today. One is extremism and the other one is expansionism. The centerpiece of these two ideologies is Somalia. Both ideologies are based on ethno-nationalism and they are interconnected. The first one, the extremism, the biggest group among others is Al Shabaab, and their base center is Somalia. They believe that they are the legitimate authority to govern every Somali speaking community in the Horn of Africa, and their land belongs to Al Shabaab. Same thing, Somalia government believes that she is the single authority to rightfully govern every Somali speaking community in the Horn of Africa. In fact, these two ideologies and groups reject the international and lawful borders of the Horn of Africa, and they are in constant mission to destroy those borders. So it's time to shed some light on this matter. That's what we are trying to do today, and I'm expecting some speakers to participate in this discussion today, and we will get into this discussion shortly. So welcome everybody again. Ayan, thank you for coming. Uh, welcome, bro. The mic's yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Said. I think this topic is very important, and we should have had this type of topic a long time ago. But I always reminded myself that Somalilanders, they take a time to process things, and sometimes it might kind of look like late to have this conversation, but it's also necessary too. So we're gonna get we're gonna get what we get. So, but I just want to ask you, Said, but also after that, I can continue with what I wanted to say. But I'm hoping that we're not just talking what's going on, but what are the solutions of stopping the destabilization of the Horn of Africa, and what other each country can do to stop this. For me, I'll speak mostly in the core center of Somaliland, not other countries in the region. So that would be my focus. What are the things that Somaliland could do to stop the destabilization mission in the Horn of Africa? But before I started to talk that, I was thinking more how to what is how does it destabilization looks like, and for me more it takes me to what is the Russian one of the Russian um one of the most biggest Russian person is I think most of you know, and his name is Yuri Bezmova, and he was mostly talking about how to subvert a country, and he was giving steps how to do that. And the last step of that process is the destabilization of a country. And here it's more a region, but you have to destabilize a country in order to different countries in order to destabilize the whole region. So I'm going to focus on his last step, which is destabilization, which is mostly it's the main topic today. So when he talks about destabilization of a country, he give I think 5 things. He talk about the power struggle. He talks about the economy, and also he talk about society staying away from. I mean the rift between society and also the lack of law and order. And lastly, he talks about foreigners, and I will go each one so you guys can understand. So when he talk about power struggle, he says that in this stage of destabilization of a country, the power struggle comes through populism and then irresponsible power struggle. So in here you will see political party, you will see a lot of uh, hyping a lot of populism. You see the struggle between political parties. You will see the struggle between different organizations. In the sense where in Somaliland, if you look at the stage, you see right now between a ruling party and political parties and other political parties. You even see the power struggle between clans. You will see even struggle between different thinking, a different ideology, because this is the last step, because you already been subverted into different ideologies, and now you struggle between different ideology between society. And then you go to the next step, which is economy. And in the economy, you see destruction of bargain process. So here, destruction of bargain process is, I want this. Why I don't get this? Why I don't get this amount of money from this economy? Why this particular people or group of people are getting this? So there's no there's that lack of bargain process where in terms of economy, it has to based on meritocracy. It have to based on basic understanding of investment and things like that. And in the case of Somaliland, where you see even people will fight like, why we like, it's been going for a long time, like why should we give the land to DB World to invest, and then nobody's giving even the answer. Do you have the money to invest? Do you have that back end process for you to invest? You don't, but you don't want to give that because there's the back end process of economy is ending. And also you see a destruction of economy in sense where in Somaliland you see, and I already say is not a conspiracy theory. I'm saying you see the burning of souk markets in Somaliland, the target of traders. When you target traders, markets, because in Somaliland the economy is very informal. So you see the target of traders. And that target of traders is not just only related to Somaliland. You see the interconnected of that trading route, like where today we've seen that there's a fire in Wajale on the border of Ethiopia. Because there's a route, there's a Berbera corridor there. So you have to target the traders where there are traders are the core center of the economy, because they're the one who circulated the money, and the money create foreign currency, and foreign currency is what sustain countries. So that's where the stage you see in the destabilization of a national. And what is here could be yield. So there are 2 things here could happen, and that's when you realize it. Is this country is gonna uh, be destroyed quickly or badly. In other countries, when this stage happen, you see there is a yield for a big brother, like especially here, like here where I live in America, where you have to see America takes steps, a country takes step and control everything. It's a good yield, but it shows that there's unstable or destabilization of economy is sometimes it's not good to have a very a big to fail a government where it controls everything. So it's not good because there's no that bargain process or imbalance between the government and people, between investment and regulation and things like that. So the government has to take a big step in terms of maintain that or even try to stop that destabilization, which is good. We also see in China too at the moment too, where China is actually a struggle because you remember there is a war between China and America, where it's not like an actual war already, but it's like there's a lot of things going on. So you see at the moment here in China where you see the bargaining process of destabilizing China, where China is doing it to America and America is doing to China, where now you see there's a lot of uh, government of China tried to control everything because there was issues with real estate falling in China. There's not a lot of hope of doing business in China and things like that. So that's the one step in a government can take that can yield because there's a lack of bargain process in economy where the government will come in very strong and try to control things. Where in Somaliland we see the opposite, and that's where it's very scary moment because you don't see even that government, that big brother, come in and say like, okay, we get squeeze a little bit here and try to control what's going on with this destabilization. Where you see the lack of that, where it's okay to see the big brothers coming in and maintain things, but in a sense where it should not be needed, but because there's a destabilization, then you need that. But at the same time, it's very scary where you don't see something like that is happening. So that's the case of Somaliland. And then the next step that in destabilization is the society where there's no rule of law, and this has happened in a very grassroots participation. uh, there's a morality goes down. We've seen Somaliland where and it's very grassroots where you see things like a Galiba. What happened is very, it happened in very grassroots, in the mountain of Galiba. It cannot get so grassroots like that. We've seen MPs pushing things that are actually against the law, like denying the Isaac genocide we just see today. We've seen where young people to a point where they take things into their hands. So things get very grassroots, get all the way deeper to like an individual, a society, a community, and all of them are breaking laws, and there's no anything to maintain. So and that's where later, once a country is being destabilized, then you would see what is they call anarchism and things like that, because it goes all the way down to the grassroots. And the last one is the foreign. So here where you are as a country, you've been isolated out, um, and also you can be interfered by foreign countries. We've seen in case of Somaliland where in the issue of Lasano, where we see the interference of foreign, where yeah, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, because your country is on the stage of destabilization, because that's where um, uh, uh, foreign countries could interfere you. We've seen where a small office from UK where it says you can do this and you cannot do this to Somalia and the whole country. So and so those are the stages of destabilization. But before that happens, there's other stages of subversion where I don't think that's the topic today, because I think even for some in case of Somalia, we passed those stages. We're now in the last stage, which is destabilization. But Saida will talk later about
Thank you, Ayan.
solutions. But I'm just gonna hand my
Yeah,
mic.
of course, that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you, Ayan. I'll come back to you shortly. Let me explain this. Why would I say these two ideologies are interconnected. I will explain that. The extremism comes from Somalia, and the main organization is Al-Shabaab, among others. And I've already explained it, their core idea. Also, Somalia government core idea is based on borderless East Africa, that Somali-speaking societies are superior to the other nations in the Horn. There are two constitutions that Somalia ever had. One is the one they drafted in 1960, and they forcefully make Biden in 1961. Article 4 of that constitution states the borders, territorial borders of Somalia. And if you look into that article, you will never say where Somalia says my border is there. There's no borders at all. And it clearly states that Somalia can change its territorial border anytime. It only needs 80% of its parliament to vote to do so. And if you look in 1960 national ID law of Somalia, it says every single Somali speaking person in the Horn of Africa belongs to Somalia, not only him or her, but also their lands, regardless which country they are in, no borders. That's what it means. If you are in Ethiopia and Somali speaking person, you and your land belongs to Somalia government. Same thing, Djibouti, Kenya, Somaliland. So that's the core idea of Somalia government. And today's constitution, which is transitional, by the way, of Somalia, Article 7 also talks about the borders Somalia. It only says Somalia shares border with Djibouti, which is fake, by the way, because the Republic of Somaliland is in between Somalia and Djibouti. But anyway, Somalia is claiming that it has borders with Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya. But it doesn't say where that border runs. So it means it's open. In fact, today, the president of Somalia launched a program which Somalia government issues national ID card to its citizens. Keep eyes on that matter. Who Somalia gives to national identification? It is every Somali-speaking community from East Africa. Right. Come back to Al-Shabaab. There is an article published on Tony Blair Institute of Global Change. First time it was published 11 December 2014. Again, it was republished 18th of October 2017. It says this: Al-Shabaab's ideology is based on Greater Somalia. That's what they said. And in fact, the creator of this group was a man called Hassan Dahir Awais. He created the Islamic Union Court, in which Al-Shabaab was the armed wing of that group. Later on, he had a fight with young Al-Shabaab leaders because they invited foreign fighters into Al-Shabaab. And he said, no, it's based on Greater Somalia ambition, so you cannot bring foreigners into us. And they said no. So he he went to Somalia government, and now he's under house arrest in Mogadishu. Okay, if these two ideologies, Somalia government ideology and extreme group ideology, work together or interconnected, why are they fighting in Somalia? It is about power struggle. One wants to take over, but outside Somalia, they are doing the same job. Do we have a proof for that? Yes. Few days back, the government of Somaliland, the Republic of Somaliland, made a press release they wrote a letter and they said 600 of Al-Shabaab fighters from Somalia entered into Somaliland town of Lascanod, led by Fuad Shangole, which is one of the highest leaders of Al-Shabaab group. That was true though. Only 2 days later, Somalia dispatched a delegation comprised 80 members of its higher and lower houses of parliament and also ministers from the federal government of Somalia. They took a plane from the capital city of Somalia, Mogadishu, entered into Somaliland, the eastern city of Las Anod, where today is occupied by Al-Shabaab, supported by Somalia National Forces. Why do Somalia government do that? Just to cover up for Al-Shabaab presence in Las Anod and show the world that Somaliland government is wrong. There's no Al-Shabaab in there because my government officials are there. Otherwise, Al-Shabaab will kill all of them. Outside Somalia, I said, Al-Shabaab and Somalia government work together. Inside Somalia, they present themselves as an open enemy fighting inside Somalia. So Somalia is blindfolding the regional governments of the Horn of Africa and the international community. What's the solution? Ayan asked me. This is the solution. It's time for the regional government like Kenya, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and the Republic of Somaliland government to work together and launch programs to fight these two dangerous ideologies and the forces who are fighting this cause. Instead, unfortunately, they are doing the opposite. Kenya, Ethiopia, and Djibouti have been pushing Somaliland to be annexed into Somalia, at least for the last 3 decades. What's going to happen if they succeed to do so and force Somalia to overtake the Republic of Somaliland? Here's the thing. Both Al-Shabaab and Somalia government ambition of expansionism's final stop is not Somaliland. In fact, they want to take over the largest state of Ethiopia when it comes by land, which is Somali state of Ethiopia. And at the same time, it is the fourth most populated federal state of Ethiopia. Both Somalia government and Al-Shabaab wanted to take over that state, to annex that state into Somalia. At the same time, Somalia and it is Al-Shabaab are claiming the Republic of Djibouti to be theirs, and they want to take over it. Similarly, the northeastern regions of Kenya, which, by the way, has more than 3 million Somali-speaking Kenyans in that place. So taking over Somaliland, next step will be going into those countries, and they will pay unprecedented price by allowing Somalia and its terrorists to take over Somaliland. In fact, the whole world will pay the price. How? Number one, Somaliland is located or situated the most strategic place in the Horn of Africa. Number one, it has a mountainous region, which is, by the way, close to the shores of Gulf of Aden. And today is busiest, or maybe second busiest maritime in the world, runs through the nose of Somaliland, Gulf of Berbera or Gulf of Aden, later name it. Al-Shabaab presence in Somaliland will be at reach of those maritime supplies, and they can sustain in Somaliland because they will have too many places to hide, and at the same time there will be water to drink in those mountainous regions, because there are too many streams that run through those areas throughout the year, if you know what I'm saying. In fact, recently, the warlord of Las Anod Coalition of Chaos, Gerard Jama, was in Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, to organize anarchism and violence and extremism in the northeastern portion of Ethiopia and northwestern region of Somaliland, and to radicalize the communities of those areas to accept the extremism and exponentialism ideologies of Somalia. The Ethiopia government is blindfolded. His assistant man and the spokesperson of Coalition of Chaos of Las Anod, Mr. Falaluk, was also in Chikchiga, the capital of Somali state of Ethiopia, to help that cause. Unfortunately, the government of Ethiopia and Djibouti did not do enough to stop that. How can that affect those two countries? If they succeed to radicalize those communities and make them against the Somaliland government and also Ethiopia government, the biggest supply line of Ethiopia runs through those areas. It's the real road and the highway that goes to Djibouti port, which, by the way, Ethiopia uses more than 90% of its export and import. The second port that Ethiopia uses is Berbera. The real way that comes from Berbera also runs somewhere close to those areas. So allowing those ideologies set foot on those areas will cost Ethiopia unprecedented price, because it will threaten and in fact put into risk Ethiopia's national security and interests. So the best thing to do today is, number one, Somaliland is at the front line of the war against these two dangerous ideologies, because these two ideologies waged war against the stability, the most stable and democratic nation in the whole Somaliland, and they are already pouring into Somaliland border, especially the eastern towns, including Las Anod. So it's time for Kenya, Ethiopia, and Djibouti governments first to recognize the lawful and legitimate independency of the Republic of Somaliland. Number two, they need to help Somaliland to win this war within Somaliland so Ethiopia and Djibouti could be safe. There's one more thing. These two ideologies have a group. Some people say that they have a hidden name, which is G21, meaning Group of 21st of October 1960. That day was the day that Mohammed Siad Barre forcefully confiscated the power in Mogadishu, Somalia. He did military coup, by the way, everybody knows that. This group consists of intellectuals. Some of them became the prime ministers of Somalia. One president of Somalia is included, and also diplomats and intellectuals from Kenya, both Kenya and Ethiopia are part of this group, including the regional leader of Somali state of Ethiopia, Mustafa Akhtar, and the prominent Kenyan member of parliament, Farah Maalin. Constantly, this group visits Eritrea president, and they have contact with him. What are they trying to do in there? As we know, Djibouti and Eritrea fought in 2008. Today, still their forces are in fight in the areas of the border between two nations. The Anfur community in Djibouti owns the landmass of Djibouti, and they say more than 60% or maybe 70% of Djibouti territory, although they are not the most populated community in Djibouti. More than 300,000 Anfars live, and they make almost close to 40% of Djibouti's population. They had rivalries, dead fights with Djibouti government. They call Fruit. They have been there since early 1990s. Today they are not armed, but they exist as a political group, and they're fighting to confiscate the power of Djibouti. I mean, the president's chair in Djibouti. There is also Somali-speaking opposition in Djibouti. So this group, Farah Maalin and his team, they want to use the president of Eritrea, Isaias Afwerki, to destabilize the stability of Djibouti. And soon, if they are not stopped, they will succeed that. That itself puts Ethiopia's interests in Djibouti at risk. So it means setting fire on the whole eastern portion of the continent. Those activities could be stopped if only the governments of the region help Somaliland and create efforts to stop these two dangerous ideologies. I will speak later. So let me allow Ayan says few words again. And as I said, we will not stay this space so long today. It's only 1 hour to 1 hour 30 minutes space, and inshallah, it will be recorded. We are already recording it. People can listen to this space later on. Ayan, welcome back.
Thank you, Said. I like that you break it down into two, but for me, I don't break down into two. I just think it's just one. It's just an expansionist from Somalia since 1960 all the way to today. It's just the breakdown into two is just how that expansion is. It has a different um, lines into it where some use extreme ways of getting, like Al Shabaab, and where some other use international community, local politics to get through that. But they all have one foundation, which is expansionism, and it's ethno expansionism, but I don't want to call it ethno expansionism. It's more like Somalia expansionism. So that's the new term that we need to get used to it. When you look at this expansionism, I'll talk a little bit more about the non extreme type of looking expansionism, where you might not see as a combative, like the way you see Al Shabaab. So, which is actually coming directly from Somalia elites or elite who believes in this expansionism. So they could be not just from Somalia, they could be from some other places. So this is where you see a country like Somalia, where it's fighting its neighbors. We've seen during Farmajo where he was fighting Kenya, because at that time, and they are very calculated. At that time, the president of Kenya was against the expansionism ideology that is coming from Somalia. Where right now you might not see that much, because the current president, I think he kind of understands these people, because they have their people in Kenya who are not from Somalia. So the president of Kenya, Ruto, right now, he's very surrounded by the same people who are actually were pushing for Farmajo to fight Kenya. So, and now you realize that it was not about Kenya, or it's not about the borders. It was all about, hey, we have someone at Kenya State House, the president of Kenya, who knows what we're doing, and we have to use uh, our expansionist ideologies to fight him. So it's a very hectic. Actually, it's one of the worst because at least the one in Al Shabaab, and you can fight it. This one is very tricky. It's very hidden sometimes. It needs people to see bigger picture. It needs a really complex thinking beyond just basic thinking. Um, so this is the one where it will fight Kenya. It would try to use we are patriotic, things like CBB, nobody no law. It would fight Ethiopia, and then later on when Ethiopia doesn't bow down, it's a little bit aligned with what they want. Then Ethiopia is our friends. They would fight Djibouti. They will work on a destabilizing, even when they say that you are no longer threatened to our ideology. They're still fighting you in some sense. So that's the thing that people need to understand, especially the region. Even when now they say Kenya is our friend, when few years ago Kenya was not our friend, they are actually destabilizing Kenya at the moment. The Ruto has surrounded by the same people that who they are thinking like Farah Maalim, who are actually going to destabilize in Kenya too. And you see the same thing too when they were surrounding themselves with Ethiopia under Abiy in the beginning. And Abiy thought, oh, they're my friend, we're no longer, rival, we're no longer enemies between Somalia and Ethiopia because Farmajo is there. Guess what? Look what is Ethiopia at the moment. So they were destabilizing Ethiopia slowly, slowly, slowly to a point where Ethiopia is today what we see Ethiopia. Because what? They were putting a lot of elements that into Abiy's thinking, do this, fight TPFL, whatever, fighting Oromos, now fighting Amharas, accept Eritrea to interfere your borders and things like that. So the results are here, where at the beginning Abby was thinking, "Oh, this is my friend. We're no longer having issue." These people they don't take it friends. They are all 100% work on their ideology. And now you see also they're coming for Djibouti. They're coming for Djibouti. And even if today Djibouti align with their thinking, still they will destroy Djibouti. So just think about that. And for Somaliland for them is just one of the biggest obstacle into their ideology, because they say they will go out and say we want Somali ethnicity, national and things like that. But Somaliland is where it does the opposite. It's like there's no such a thing, there's no ethno nationalism. So it's Somaliland is just busting out their ideology into pieces, and they cannot articulate that in front of international community. You talk about Somalis people are one, but in reality are not. And here Somaliland is telling you there's no such a thing as Somalis one. It's never happened. We're all different countries, we are different peoples, we are different cultures. So it busted the whole concept that they've been selling to international community. So Somaliland is where the solution needs to come. It doesn't need to come to Ethiopia. It doesn't need to come to Djibouti. It doesn't need to come to Eritrea. It doesn't need to come to Kenya. Somaliland should be where they brainstorm of solution to end this ideology. Of course, we're gonna need partners to executing these solutions, but Somaliland is where the solution should come. I want to talk about the solution, and one of the things I've been insist about the solution, is very important, very important. And I'm so surprised a lot of Somaliland doesn't see the importance. Somaliland need to have a safe space in order to articulate this solution and shoot them out to different places so this ideology could end. But you cannot do that when you don't act as a de jure state. That's very important. You know, you cannot do that when you're not taking legal aspect of these things. When you look at how the Nazism ideology was destroyed in Europe. It was not destroyed just like, oh, we won, we won against Hitler. No, it went all the way, and it took breaking down into law and order, laws, making sure that these things is not coming back. And even if it's coming back, it's gonna face laws, because people gonna romanticize the past and want to bring things that might elevate them in terms of their inferiority and things like that. So you have to have a laws that always stop those people. And that's what happened in Europe when they were fighting the Nazis. They make sure that there's a law that preventing those things to happen, and even if they come back, they will be able to be stopped. It's not gonna be nice. It's not gonna be 100%, but you have to think like that. So what is Somaliland could do in order to fight this ideology? Take your case to court, you know? Take your case to court. And that's where the foundation of everything. Take your because you want to have that safe space, and you can get that safe space by actually act as a de jure state and then articulate your solutions and throw it to other countries. But you cannot do that when you don't act like a de jure state, and it impacts you more because you are the only one who is a solution oriented of this solution. It impacts you a lot because you don't behave like a de jure status. It today it impacts you where this ideology could keep could destabilize your country. We've seen how Somalia is sending politicians in Somaliland while the army of Somalia has been beheaded. We've seen the Somalia president taking the your law, the June 26th, which is very important, which is your law, claiming and take it as like it's almost like annexing your independence and and what is when someone else, when a country has been annexed by other countries, what do? You fight legally, legally, so very important. And we've seen that Somaliland uplifted al-Shabaab, terrorism from Las Hano to Mogadishu. But you didn't even fight illegally because you have not even understood who you are fighting with. What we see in Somaliland, we see Puntland. Puntland is where? Puntland is Somalia. Just first, I always say your pen is mightier than your bullets. Very important, you know. So how you use your pen? You use your pen through laws. That's where you use your pen. You just don't write few Twitter and then that's it. It has to be legally. It has to be pushed in terms of legal aspect of it, and then that's how you win. So that's for me. It's one of the foundation of a solution because then Somaliland can sit down and say, "This is how we're gonna explain to Kenya how this ideology is affecting Kenya. This is how we're going to explain to Ethiopia, and this is the solution how this ideology destabilizes their countries. This is how we're going to explain to Djibouti and things like that. But at the moment, you have little to offer because you don't behave like a de jure status.
Thank you again, Ayan. I was explaining a short while ago that there are two main dangerous ideologies in the Horn of Africa, which is extremism and expansionism. And the main center of these two ideas are Somalia. They're based in Somalia. So one is run by Al-Shabaab, among other groups, extremist groups in Somalia, and the other one is run by the government of Somalia. And I brought some examples and evidences. Let me give you one living example today to show that these two ideologies are interconnected and actually they go hand in hand, parallel lines. Today, if you go in the capital city of Somalia, Mogadishu, you will see a very big monument, a statue in the middle of, erected in the middle of the city. That statue is a man sitting on the back of a horse with sword on his right hand. His name was Muhammad Abdullah Hassan. The guy lived 100 years ago, and he was the second person in leadership of the Darvish movements of that time, a group that terrorized the Horn of Africa as a whole for 21 years. They have killed more than 250,000 people in East Africa, mainly from the Republic of Somaliland at that time. But Somalia calls him a hero of the ethno-national, what they call ethno-nationalism fight. Okay, so that statue is in there. If you go into Ethiopia, the capital city of Somali state of Ethiopia, Chikchiga, again, you will see the same statue in the middle of that city, Chikchiga. The same man, same name. The only difference is the Chikchiga one is bigger than Mogadishu one. So again, he's a hero in Chikchiga. Okay. Go back to Somalia. The biggest training camp for Al-Shabaab fighters is named after the same man. It's called Muhammad Abdullah Hassan Military Training Camp for Al-Shabaab fighters. So both Al-Shabaab and Somalia government claim to be following the step of Muhammad Abdullah Hassan and his group. Look at this. Again, Somalia has a group of its army named after dervishes. So you'll go into Somalia and you'll see this is the Dervish army of Somalia. Same thing Al-Shabaab group has. Right? How they can be fighting each other while they are following the footsteps of one man? Both of them, and extremist groups. That's one example. The other example is today Al-Shabaab is fighting against the Somaliland National Security Army in the eastern part, the border town of Las Anod. And they have been doing so for the last at least 9 months, right? With the help of Somalia, regional and national armies. Whatever they call Danab, Darvish, whatever Somalia calls, they were pouring into Las Anod. But Somalia was blindfolding the whole world and was saying, my army are not involved in what's happening in Las Anod. At the same time, Somalia was refusing that it is Al-Shabaab terrorists crossing the border into Somaliland and fighting against the Somaliland National Army. As I said earlier, a few days ago, actually 3 days ago, the government of Somaliland issued a press statement and said there is Al-Shabaab presence in Las Anod and 600 of their men just get into Las Anod. Like I said, Somalia again dispatched between 80 to 100 of its national officials, the leaders of its parliament, actually members of parliament. And the second person of laws of Somalia, a guy named Timad, whatever they call, accompanied by some of the federal ministers of the government of Somalia, just to show the world that Al-Shabaab is not in Las Anod, which was a cover-up mission. I hope the intelligence of East Africa governments know what's going on in Las Anod, and Somaliland government already informed them. That's my expectation, right? So, two things needed to be done by the governments of the frontlines means Kenya, Ethiopia, Somaliland, and also Djibouti, because the final stop of Somalia's expansionism mission and Al-Shabaab expansionism mission is not Somaliland, like I said earlier. They want to go into Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya. They literally wanted to annex those countries, at least a portion of those countries, into Somalia. All right? Both Al-Shabaab and Somalia government. So two things must be done. Number one, as I said, these governments must recognize the legitimate independence and sovereignty of the Republic of Somaliland, which is based on, by the way, international law. Because Somaliland gained its independence lawfully from Britain in 1960 and is still a sovereign independent nation. But the governments of the region and the rest of the world are denying today, which makes Somaliland prone to be taken over by Al-Shabaab and Somalia ambition. And that puts risk the whole world interest of the region, mainly the frontline governments, number one. Number two, they need to help Somaliland win this war that Somalia and it is Al-Shabaab wage. Otherwise, the fight is going to go into Djibouti and Ethiopia and Kenya and everywhere. So the whole region will be set into fire by these two ideologies. And already, believe me or not, Somalia government and Al-Shabaab radicalized some of Somali-speaking communities in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Djibouti. They are waiting, those people, the moment that either Al-Shabaab or Somalia government, whichever wins in Somalia and takes over the power, to set foot into those countries and territories. They will have a large portion of Somali-speaking communities fight for that cause. So these governments fail to realize how dangerous these ideologies are and to fight against it. I quote two presidents of Somalia. One is the one who is in power today, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, and the other one was Mohamed Abdullah Farmajo. You know, he was ex-president, by the way, and ex-prime minister. Deeply involved with what's happening today in the Horn of Africa, specifically the destabilization process of Somaliland and elsewhere. Quote, we Somali-speaking people are superior to the other nation of the Horn of Africa because we are Somalis. That's quote. It's a song, by the way, that Somalia presidents and leadership as well like. That is a message sent to the Somali-speaking communities in neighboring countries, meaning we are coming. Prepare yourselves. The question is why Ethiopia, Kenya, and Djibouti are helping Somalia to take over Somaliland in order to be closer to their next move, their next step to get into the other countries like Djibouti and Ethiopia. They shouldn't do that. In fact, they should help Somaliland. That's one thing. The other thing is Somalia uses Machiavellianism tactics. They blindfold the countries of the region, the governments in Nairobi, Addis Ababa, and Djibouti. They hide their intentions sometimes, at least sometimes, and they convince the world that Somalia government is fighting for the good cause of humanity. That's not the case. Actions speak louder than the words. How? The whole world is today in Somalia using Somalia government to fight and win over Al-Shabaab. But Somalia trained national army by the international community are fighting shoulder by shoulder with Al-Shabaab fighters against the lawful and legitimate army of the Republic of Somaliland inside Somaliland borders, international borders. But Somalia names, uses other names like tribe name, Harti, Durbanto, whatever she calls. And she says, hey, I'm not involved with that. Unfortunately, Somaliland government did not make enough noise to unblindfold the international community, which is blindfolded by Somalia government. So that's the discussion of this topic today. The evidence is the proof is right in front of you. Whether you want to understand it or not, it's your choice. If you do not act today, tomorrow you're going to pay a price. So if you guys want to speak, take the mic. Otherwise, we are getting closer to close the session today. Speakers. If not, that's okay. We're going to close soon. So, Burda, my co-host, are you going to say a word? And Ayan too. Adna, welcome.
Salam alaikum. Give me a moment. I just got a phone. Give me
Okay, while Adna is coming back, Mr. Bur or Ayan, are you going to say a word?
Sorry, Saeed, I got a telephone call. Can you hear me, Saeed?
Yes, well, go ahead.
Thank you for this topic. I think this topic is really, really important because, this Somalia, if you look at in the 1960s, Somalia, there was a meeting by the Organization for African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And this was in regards to ratifying colonial borders. Somalia did not want to ratify that treaty. So she already had this ambition from day one to claim lands in Kenya, to claim lands in Djibouti, and also Ethiopia, in the pretext of a greater Somalia. And if you look at this issue about greater Somalia, there has never been a Somalia nation or a Somali nation prior to colonialism. So here you already can see that Somalia has had ambitions of expansionism for a long time. And all this, I think, stems from its ideology of fascism, extremism, irredentism, expansionism. So what Somalia has done is exactly what you're saying, Saeed. They are very Machiavellian. If you look at Kenya, Kenya has truly welcomed the people of Somalia for many, many years. And Somalia has tried multiple times to destabilize Kenya. Even in the 1964, 63, 64 shifter wars, Kenya has faced the wrath of Somalia. But I truly pity Kenya because Kenya has not figured out that the terror wings of Somalia, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, they have one ambition, and that ambition aligns with the governmental policy of Somalia, and it is of pan-Somalism. Exactly what you're saying, Saeed, is correct. They are utilizing Machiavellian tactics. So they have this front where they show solidarity, they say we are pan-Africanist. But if you truly dig into Somalia's history, they have never been pro-African. The people who have always been pro-Africa are the people from Somaliland, and it's in the archives. For example, the people of Somaliland aided the Mau Mau rebellion. The people of Somaliland were anti-apartheid. So we have to realize, like, for example, the terrorists right now in Las Anod, Somaliland, the Republic of Somaliland, Mr. Abdiqani Hussein aka Abdi Madobe, he was born in Somalia. He might have roots in Somaliland based on his, let's say, for his tribe might come from Somaliland originally, but he was born in Somalia, and this ideology that he brought to Somaliland is from Somalia. What is his goal? His goal is to get hold of the Golis Mountains of Somaliland, and that is a dangerous premise. And then also the Bale Mountains of Ethiopia. So this is similar to the Taliban. It's going to be very, very difficult for Ethiopia, Somaliland, Kenya, Djibouti to fight terrorists if they get hold of mountains. So I'm hoping the people of Ethiopia, especially the Ahmara people, you have to realize the people of Somalia truly do not like the people. The people, they call everybody Ahmara. The people of Somalia, when they talk about the Ahmara people, there's a derogatory tinge to it. So I'm hoping that the people of Ethiopia, you shouldn't be blindfolded by the Machiavellian, charming tactics of Somalia. They truly want to see the fall of Ethiopia. They want to see the fall of Kenya. They are not a tolerant people. Their ideology is always of hate. So open your eyes. Somaliland is a buffer for Ethiopia, for Kenya. If Somaliland falls, then Ethiopia will immediately fall. Thank you so much, Saeed. I think this is very important. I think we should now reach out to the international community so they know what is happening here. People from Somalia are not for Africa. They might tell you that they are for Africa. No, they're going to sell Somaliland. They're going to sell Somalia to anybody, to the highest bidder. For example, there is a research document known as Better Off Stateless. You're going to realize that Somalia sold all the assets of the Somali Republic to multiple other countries like Russia, like Iraq, while the people of the Somali Republic suffered. So absolutely not. They are not for Africa. Thank you, Saeed.
Thank you, Adna. You and Ayan are well versed for this matter. I'm going to bring one more evidence to you. A few weeks back, one of the government officials of regional authority of the eastern or northern Somalia, known as Puntland, they call him minister, by the way, stood in a hall in front of the federal government of Somalia officials and also the regional authority, a large portion of intellectuals of the region. And here's what he said, quote, "We, Somalia, are fighting against Somaliland today. And the war we wage against Somaliland is the same war that the Darvish and its leader wage against the British infidels and their followers, Somalilanders, 100 years ago. So we are the Darvishes, they are today's British infidels." And he mentioned a British official which was killed by Darvishes in the Dul Madobe War 100 years ago. His name was Richard Corfield. So this guy, the minister from Puntland state of Somalia, said, today's Richard Corfield is Musa Bihi, the president of the Republic of Somaliland, and today's infidels or British infidels are his followers, meaning Somaliland citizens. And he said, it's obligation on us to wipe them on the face of the earth. See the magnitude of this ideology. And in fact, they are trying to do so. They have sent every fighter they could get to fight against Somaliland's army inside Somaliland international borders. Unfortunately, the British representative to Somaliland in Hargeisa is a woman called Lisa Walker or something. She was tweeting that Somaliland military was shelling civilians in Las Anod, which is a lie, by the way. So she's supporting the cause of that guy who said, we are still killing British infidels in Somaliland. I don't know if they are blindfolded or what's going on, but it's really amazing what's happening in there. We have a guy called Kevin Hill with us. So let me welcome him before I close the session. and see what he says on this matter.
How's it going, everybody? Hey, say, I just wanted to ask you guys this, and I don't know if it's true. It could be hearsay, could just be some rumors, but I'm hearing a lot of people say Michelle Obama, she's got a big old black cock.
Looks like he's one of the Somalians. The only people I know behave like that is that's from the, maybe that place. Anyway, I'm sorry that this happened in my space. And Chama, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you. Thank you, Said. Thank you for hosting this space. And truly, I think everybody in here would say welcome back, because we needed to hear your knowledge, and Alhamdulillah, you've raised a good point. My only addition to this is Ayan mentioned fighting these people in courts is one of the things, and the other one is following the money trail in financial institutions that carry the Islamic name, because the way that it can be traced and seen that to carry out these operations, these so-called terrorist organizations or groups that are trying to destabilize the region, they have ways of transferring large quantities of money through financial institutions. And I'm sure if the countries of Kenya and Ethiopia and Djibouti set out to investigate them, it would be one way to maybe slowing slowing their operations. And lastly, I need a question for you, Said. Where does Eritrea come into this as a country that we can say it promotes this ideology, as it's stated that a lot of the Somali army trained in Eritrea. I yield back. I give back to you.
Thank you, Chama. Actually, I'm not sure if Eritrea knows what this group are doing, because as I said, they use Machiavellianism tactics and they subvert people to their cause. So maybe they will say to Eritrea, hey, our interests are aligned to yours, so let's work together. But they will hide their evil intention from those leaders in Ethiopia and Eritrea. That's what they do. In fact, Farah Malin, the MB from Kenya, posted a few days ago that he held a meeting with Eritrea's president Isaias Afwerki for 2 hours. The American Ethiopian man named Faisal Roble, who's very energetic activism for these two expansionism-based ideologies on Twitter and elsewhere, regularly prizes Eritrea's leadership, and sometimes maybe he's in contact with them. All right. So what they do is they show one face to the world and regional government, but they are hiding their agendas, right? And people only notice when it is too late, like Somaliland did now. Think about this. The Destabilization Conference against Somaliland was held in Ethiopia, in Chikchiga. When they when they were done, they issued a press release and they said, "Hey, we are going to wage war into Somaliland." That was when Somaliland government was awake. And what did Mustafa Akjar, the regional leader of Ethiopia, Somali state of Ethiopia, said? Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know this was happening in Chikchiga. Impossible. Again, he's doing some activities, but Abiy Ahmed of Addis Ababa doesn't know maybe what's going on in Chikchiga, and they are that his regional leader Mustafa Akjar is after Ethiopia's national interest, which is a safe and peaceful Somaliland that Ethiopia can use the Berbera highly equipped and effective port for this national interest. So this is what they do. This group, they're very dangerous. And before I close the session, let me uh, call Ayan again. And Ayan, if you can make it short, that'll be great. Welcome all again.
No, I just want to add a little bit in terms of how sophisticated they are. So they're sophisticated where they will go to Eritrea and says, we can give you A, B, and Z. Vala Maalim utilizing Kenya because now his group has more skin in the game with the current president of Kenya, Ruto, and say, hey, Kenya is very trusted with the Western countries. We'll make sure that Kenya speak for you because, the people who are after you are Western countries and so and so. So they leverage things like that in terms of exchanging so they can get to the bigger game. But like I say, even when they do that, it always come to the end of the destruction of that country. We've seen this game in Ethiopia when Farmajo was selling to Abiy like, oh, you get a seaport, you get oceans, you get everything. But what is Abiy got? It he got a TPFL, he got a Amhara, he got Oromo, he got the whole country being destroyed of Ethiopia. So at the end of the day, you're just agreeing with the devil. And when you have an agreement with the devil, it always your agreement become a devish. So and that's what it is. And then when I said that the level of sophistication has gotten into places is they have people in like Ilhan Omar, they have people the like Adan Duale in the minister in Kenya, they have people who are advisor like Farah Maalim to Eritreans and Abi, you know, that's how the sophisticated they got. And like I say, the only safe space in the Horn of Africa that can really, really, really go after them is Somaliland. So what they do, they make sure that Somaliland is the first country to be destroyed and to not see its potential. I always say Somalilanders dream bigger. You should be the leaders of Horn of Africa. And you cannot be leader of the Horn of Africa when you allow other people to take leadership into destroying you, Start dreaming being, be the leader. You are the solution of this ideology, which is it comes from Somalia. It's ideology of hate. You are the solution, but you cannot be the part of the solution when you don't even dream big. You think locally, you think clan A and B in Somaliland. You see Cooksey. You don't see yourself as a potential. You don't see yourself as a de jure status. You don't see yourself as a country. You know. So those are the things. For 32 years, you allow the gap, the open, the bubble to come in and burst to you. So I want you today to not allow that bubble to keep bursting to you. See yourself as a leader of not the Horn of Africa, of the whole Africa, because this expansionist mindset, if it goes bigger, it's going to destroy the whole of Africa. Africa has a less border issues than any continent in this planet. Why? Because they are all respecting the OAU about the colonial borders. You think Kenyans, Maasai don't want to have their own country, ethno countries too? They're in Tanzania, they're in Kenya. You know, they could create that too. What it would create? It would create a distraction between Tanzania and Kenya. You think the Afar who are in Eritrea, in Djibouti, in Ethiopia, they don't want to see an Afar country? They don't do that because they know it will destroy Ethiopia, it will destroy Eritrea, it will destroy Djibouti. Do you think the Hausa people who you will find them in a different borders of Fulani, where you find them in a different West African countries, they don't have an ambition to be Fulani countries? They do, but they respect that, and that's why there's a less borders situations in Africa, because people understood that these borders, we were never countries other than Egypt, ancient Egypt, and few countries that had a principle of a country. In Africa, we were just a tribal people roaming around. So the idea of the modern countries was created by colonial borders, and actually it helped us being very tolerant and live with each others. You know, it helped us see a Xhosa people lives in Namibia, in South Africa, in Botswana peacefully and accepted their nationalism through those countries. It helped people to trade with Africa. It helped Africa to have a pan-Africanism. It helped Africa to love each other because of those understanding that we don't need to create ethno-nationalism situation in the continent of Africa, because what we're gonna be, what we seen in the World War I, World War II in Europe. What we're gonna be seeing what we see in the Northern America, where big countries that is created based on the whiteism, like America, that control the whole northern of America, where California used to be Mexico, but it's no longer. Hawaii used to be its own thing, it's no longer, because that's what you get when you create ethno-nationalism. You create a situation, you create oppression within the oppression. That's why we have oppression of black people in America, and it's never gonna end, because America itself is based on ethno-nationalism, based on the colors of the people's skin. You see? So Africa learned to torrent each other through those borders. Those borders actually make us what actually Allah, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was about to die, his end of the days, when he talked about, you are Muslim not based because of your color, your ethno-nationalism, based on your race and things like that, but based on how you are actually do the good for this planet, how you do good to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's actually the African continent. It is in principle, and it should be kept. We didn't accept colonial power because we love colonies, because we understood that by accepting that, it would make us the better people. We will torrent each other, we'll be the best of this planet.
Thank you, Jan. Again, as I said earlier, look, if you've been following every single fighter in Las Anod, or the warlords, whatever they name themselves, who picked the mic for the last 9 months, was threatening Djibouti. And Farah Maalin and his team were repeatedly dispatched to Asmara, Eritrea. The regional leader of Ethiopia, Mustafa Akjar, created animosity among Isas and Amfaris in Dirdaba area, and he was fueling those animosities in order that war crosses the border into Djibouti, so Djibouti could be weakened. See what I'm saying? These people build their war or cause from bottom up, right? Why they're threatening Djibouti? They believe they already weakened the Republic of Somaliland, so next step is Djibouti. That means Djibouti is already in deep trouble than they might think, right? Somaliland, the Republic of Somaliland, has been a buffer zone for Djibouti and Ethiopia for decades now. She was fighting along the expansionism ideology, which is very dangerous from Somalia government, and it is, and at the same time, the extremists. So that nobody helped, and instead, Somaliland was pushed to surrender to Somalia, and it is terrorists. That's not fair, right? And if Djibouti and Ethiopia believe they will be safe by handing over the stable and peaceful Republic of Somaliland to Somalia and it is extremists, wait and see. So that's what we wanted to say today in this space. I hope it made sense to everyone. Thank you for participating, the speakers, and also the listeners. It's time to close this space. Inshallah, maybe we will open another one which we will speak Somaliland language so more participants can speak on that platform, because I know many people do not like their voices to be recorded. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.